And I did that with my smaller multifamilies in the beginning. There was that moment there when I considered doing it myself. And you really, in this business, you have to really look into your heart and figure out, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a property manager, or do you want to be an investor? And I think some people are great at both. I know that I would be a terrible property manager. I don't want to talk to residents. I don't want them calling me.
As an operator, I know other investors are romanticizing multifamily investing, and I'm looking to learn from other investors' mistakes. I know you are too, and you found the right place. Welcome to Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. Hey everybody, and welcome to Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. I'm your host, Jerome, and I've got the great pleasure of having Brian Hamrick with me today. Brian, how are things out in California?
Great, Jerome, except I'm in Michigan.
Michigan.
You might be thrown off by the area code on my phone number.
Yeah, so that did surprise me. I got the opportunity. Now I got Brian's cell phone. I can text him now. He can't get away.
That's right. Yeah, I used to live in Santa Monica, California, and I have the very coveted 310 area code. So when I moved back to Michigan, because I'm from Michigan originally, I had to keep the 310.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. When I talk to people from California, it's like this super special place. One of my friends in Florida was telling me how there's no bugs in the area. He was in like San Diego or something. I was like, what do you mean there's no bugs? He's like, we go outside and there's no mosquitoes. Like, that can't be possible. And I've checked with numerous people. It's a real thing, huh?
Yeah, well, it's just so dry there. It's a desert type weather. So yeah, you don't get as many bugs, but you get other things there.
Perfect. So, Brian, I assume you're not going to give your cell phone number out to all the listeners, but if they want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, my company is called Hamrick Investment Group. I'm currently in the process of rebranding. Right now, they can go to higinvestor.com. You can also email me at Brian, Brian, at higinvestor.com. But I'm rebranding my company to be Next Level Investment Club, and I'm excited about that because it's really helped me focus my attention on what I'm very good at and what I should bring in strategic partners to help me with.
And so, out of curiosity, what are you really good at as we dig into your background?
Well, I'm creating Next Level Investment Club. And by the way, we have over 40 investors. We have 32 million plus in acquisitions. We focus on cash flowing real estate and real estate developments, primarily in multifamily and apartments, but we also do self-storage, performing and non-performing notes, and a little bit of office and a little bit of retail as well. What I'm really good at is opportunistic investing. I started investing in 2008. And I coming from California, we moved back to Michigan in 2005, and I could just see that real estate bubble forming. And I waited till it popped, started buying in 2008, multifamily apartments. By 2015, I bought my last apartment complex, and I've been sitting on the sidelines as far as multifamily goes since then. Also started diversifying into self-storage and performing and non-performing notes. But my specialty is basically buying distressed properties. Back in the Great Recession, it was foreclosures and short sales, or finding deals that are off market. I do not like bidding wars. I do not like competition. Typically, if a broker has put it out there on the market, I'm not even going to look at it because I'm just not that much of a sadist.
Yeah, I don't enjoy the competition piece either. I think everything that we've bought in the past year, maybe 18 months, we've been the only people to see it. So it's pretty exciting when you're able to get inside traction.
That's the best way to go. If you can get those inside connections and be the only one at the table, that makes a big difference.
I think so. So you you kind of mentioned it really smoothly in the conversation, like 40 million in acquisitions or something like that.
Yeah, we have over 40 investors. We have 32 million plus in acquisitions, and that's spread out between self-storage, performing and non-performing notes, and primarily multifamily and apartments.
Okay. And so this is multifamily missteps. And so let's talk about the multifamily portfolio. Like what's the range in size for your multifamily?
So multifamily, we currently have 370 units. All of them are located here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I used to own a 71 unit in Lansing, Michigan. So altogether, I've owned up to 450 units. I'm net seller at this point. And I own everything from duplexes all the way up to a 207 unit apartment community.
So I thought it was go big or go home. Why on earth would you have a 200 unit and a 2 unit?
Well, I cut my teeth. I started in single family. When I lived in Los Angeles, I was buying single family homes throughout the country. And I realized pretty quickly that going big and going home did not involve single family for me, because I had remote management. I had no idea what was going on with these properties because they were out of state. So I knew I wanted to get into multifamily. The first one I bought was a 12 unit in 2008. And then, like I said, I'm an opportunistic investor. So I just started picking up a duplex here, a 4 unit here. And these were all distressed properties in the sense that they were foreclosures, short sales during the Great Recession. So it was basically low hanging fruit. I got up to a 37 unit, then bought a 5 unit, then a 6 unit. And then I bought the 71 unit in Lansing, 207 unit. I started syndicating, obviously, bringing in other people's money. I bought the 207 unit, and then the last acquisition in 2015 was a 96 unit historic property. And I like both. I think both the smaller multifamily and the larger apartment complexes have their pluses and minuses. It's really it's deal specific.
Deal specific. So when you buy these, when you say you're opportunistic, there's like the sharks, and then there's another level, and then you kind of keep moving up the spectrum of. I think everybody as an investor thinks they're opportunistic. So are you buying like these properties with super low occupancy and just basically non-performing? You can't get bank financing, or like where's your appetite for the risk on your deals?
That's a great question. And again, it's deal specific in the sense, I'll give you some examples. So we bought the first large multifamily I bought was 37 units, and that was a short sale. A group of doctors from out of state had bought a property in a C area. They had overpaid for it before the Great Recession. We were up against one other bidder on this, and we were able to pick up 37 units for $600,000. We had to put another 200,000 into it, but that has become a property that we've refinanced several times over, and we pulled all of our money out, 2 or 3 times over. So we're making infinite cash flow off of that. That's one example. The large 207 unit apartment complex, that was a turnkey property. It was already performing as it should be, and it was listed by a broker, but we were not bidding on it because it was part of a much larger package. There were probably, I want to say maybe 10 large apartment complexes in the area. And 2 of those communities were run as one community, and that's what we bought. And the reason we were able to buy them was because the buyers who were buying the larger package, these 2 properties did not fit into their criteria. They considered them to be C properties in a C area, but we knew that they were really more like B minus properties in a B minus area. And they had the whole package under contract, but they peeled these off. So I consider that buying in between market, because they've been taken off the market, but the buyers didn't want these 2 particular properties. We were able to come in and step into their shoes and get it at a really good price. And it's performed like a dream. It's performed exactly as we expected it to. It's been a turnkey type property.
What's the secret on property management? Because so many people struggle with that one. How are you guys making that work?
Yeah, I made the decision early on that I was going to hire third-party professional management. And I did that with my smaller multifamilies in the beginning. There was that moment there when I considered doing it myself. And you really, in this business, you have to really look into your heart and figure out, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a property manager, or do you want to be an investor? And I think some people are great at both. I know that I would be a terrible property manager. I don't want to talk to residents. I don't want them calling me. I want someone else to take that on for me. So with the smaller multifamilies, I had brought on a really good third-party property management company. As I decided to go larger, I realized, you know what, I need to partner with someone who knows how to manage these larger communities. And there was a particular property in the area that I always had my eye on. And I realized, you know what, whoever's managing that property, that's someone I want to get to know. So that was Marty Green Property Management. Anybody who's from West Michigan would know that name. And I got to know him, and he ended up managing the property in Lansing. And that went so well for us that we ended up partnering together and bought 2 larger apartment communities. So I don't own the property management company, but my partner does. And there, his team is really my team as well.
Now, I listened to your podcast, and I can't remember, but I think you have like a shout out to him during your podcast, right?
Yeah, so I host the podcast, the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. And right away from the very beginning, even before I was ready to have sponsors, Marty came to me and he said, "Hey, I want to be your first sponsor." So he's been sponsoring the show for the past 3 years, and that's great because I get to basically, I'm selling on the show what I've already bought is his management team.
Beautiful. And so what did you do before you got into real estate full time? What had you down in the Bay Area or LA?
Well, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the movie posters behind me. One of the posters is Remember the Titans. And I worked on the trailer for that movie. So my business, I have 20 years in movie marketing. I'm no longer in that business, but I spent 20 years in movie marketing, 11 of those years living in Los Angeles, working for different vendors, different studios, as a copywriter, editor, producer of motion picture trailers and TV spots. And then when I moved back to Michigan, I worked remotely for about 8 years.
Wow. Now that's cool. So what made you get out of all like the glitz and glam and come over to the dark side with all us real estate owners?
Well, when I was single, I've always been a saver. I've always been very conservative with my money. And I found myself in a profession. I went out to Los Angeles to make movies, found myself in this niche making movie trailers instead. And it paid really well. And I was saving up all this money. And I realized at one point, I said, I'm making all this money and I'm not spending it because I have nothing to spend it on. I wasn't married, didn't have a family at the time. And I don't like fancy cars or expensive things. So I said, if I knew how to deploy this money smartly, I won't have to work for the rest of my career. I'll be able to retire early. So I started looking into ways to do that. That's, of course, everybody starts with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's when I came across Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that really opened my eyes to real estate investing, which then led to this path where I started I found a network in Los Angeles that was investing in single families across the country. Got plugged into that. It was a good experience. Didn't really make any money from it, but it just opened up. Every step you take leads to more steps. And that's when I started realizing, well, multifamily, apartments, efficiency of scale, density, all that, it all goes into making bigger profits. And that just led down that road to where finally eventually I learned how to syndicate, raise other people's money. And every step of the way, it's been, what do I need to learn or who do I need to partner with to get to the next level?
So did you do any like education programs or anything to get kind of to move to that next level?
Yes, yes. So, if do you want me to name names? Because I'd be happy to name names and tell you who I've learned from and partnered with and all those things. So I'm a big believer. Not Jerome, you and I were talking about this before we started rolling here. I know that there are a lot of people who pay for training and coaching and gurus and all that and never get anything from that. But I am a big believer in paying for training, paying for education, as long as you know what you want to get out of it, as long as you're very specific and targeted as to what you need from that coach, that training, that the training material. So I started the first. I'll start with the network I was in Los Angeles. I don't think it's still around, but it was the Marshall Reddick Network. And you didn't pay to be in that, but they made money from the properties you would buy around the country. And they had a number of relationships with brokers, lenders, insurance companies, management companies in good cities and good states that were growing and had like the demographics in their favor for population growth and wage growth. So I bought about 7 single family homes through them. When I started thinking, you know what, I really want to get into multifamily, the big name at the time was David Lindahl, and he's still out there. I think his training really, it's stuff that stays with me today. So I found that training very valuable. Sue Nelson is another name. She does both notes, commercial performing notes and non-performing notes, and she does multifamily and apartments. So I paid for training and coaching through her program, but I knew specifically what I wanted. I also went to David Lindahl. When I wanted to learn how to syndicate, David Lindahl was the one guy at the time who was doing training on that. So I learned syndication through his program. So that's, I did go down those paths, but I also found, a lot of it is partnering with the right people who know what they're doing, bringing attorneys on. If you're syndicating, and by syndicating, I mean raising money from other people, have a good attorney who knows how to keep it legal and do it right.
What's up, guys? It's your host, Jerome. I just want to let you know we launched Myers Methods in the fall of 2019 with the ambition to inspire a new breed of multifamily investor. If you are interested in getting into multifamily or scaling your current business, hop over to our website at myersmethods.com to grab your free 4-step guide on how to get the ball rolling.
And so now that we've kind of went all over the place, I know that you've got a quad where you learned a few lessons along the way. So if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about the background on that and let's dive into these missteps.
Yeah. So Jerome, I love the name of your podcast, Multifamily Missteps. And it inspired me to actually put down here an example of a 4-unit that I bought. And this was back in 2009. So I want to preface this by saying, look, we are recording this May of 2020. It's mid-May. We're in the middle of this coronavirus pandemic. And we don't know what types of opportunistic investing are going to be coming, whether there are going to be any or not. But the thing I want to caution your listeners about is don't just assume because you can get something at a bargain basement price that it's actually a good deal. Okay. Back in 2009, and this was the depths of the Great Recession when you could pick up amazing deals. I bought a 4-unit that was here in Grand Rapids, and it was on the edge of a kind of a not so good neighborhood, but right across the street from a better neighborhood. So it was kind of right on the dividing line. We considered it to be, a property that we could get good tenants into, and we paid $21,500 for it. Okay. Now, the gross income for this property, once it was up and running, I think there was an efficiency that we were getting that was currently going for $425, 2 1-bedrooms that were about $525, and a 2-bedroom that was $625. So altogether, that's about $2,200 a month in rent income. So just on the 1% rule, that people go by sometimes, we could have paid over $200,000 for this property at any other time. And in fact, today I'll bet it would still go for over $200,000. We pay $21,500, which is $5,375 per door. I mean, that's unheard of. We knew, and we of course we had to pay cash because it was a foreclosure, and banks would not lend on foreclosures at that time. So we had to pay cash, and we also estimated our improvement budget to be around $35,000. And that included putting a new roof on for $12,000, electrical upgrades for $5,000, $12,000 for foundation repairs and some other exterior type repairs. And all in, we were about $56,500, which is still $14,000 a door, give or take. And by all indications, once this was leased up, this should have been a cash cow, right? Yeah. So let me tell you what happened. And these are things that we could have anticipated had I had more experience to know to look for them, and just things that we could never have anticipated. So within 2 weeks of buying this property, and it was a foreclosure, but there were still 2 of the units had occupants in them. And these occupants seemed to be paying their rent. Within 2 weeks of buying this property, I got a letter from the police department, the Grand Rapids Police Department, informing me that they had to break down the door on Unit 1 and arrest the occupants for selling crack cocaine and marijuana and other unknown white pills. So right away, we have a problem because we have drug dealers living in one of our units. We were able to evict them. I had third-party management, so they were able to evict them pretty quickly. And that was great because then we were able to go in and rehab their unit, which cost, I want to say we put another $5,000 to rehab that unit, make it nice, get new tenants in there. A couple months after that, one of our tenants, unfortunately, died in his unit. This was the other tenant who had been there when we bought the property. And he had died in such a way that we had to go in and rehab completely his unit as well. So that's another $5,000.
That doesn't sound good.
Yeah, you know what? I don't want to make it sound gruesome, but it was a natural death. But sometimes even natural deaths can still cost you a lot of money because you need to clean it up properly and sometimes rip up flooring and replace flooring. So that ended up being another $5,000 to rehab that unit. Shortly after that, within the next year, the city came along, and here in Grand Rapids, we have city inspections, and they came along, and most of what they had on their list of things we needed to address, we were already in the process of addressing them, but they wanted us to also repaint the entire building because there was peeling paint. And it's in an area, well, anywhere in Michigan, that we're very concerned about lead paint, and these are old properties. So because there's peeling paint, and this is a 100-year-old property, they want you to fix that. They want you to scrape it and repaint it, which would have been about $8,000 or $9,000. We decided to just put siding on the whole thing, which is another way to deal with that. And that was $10,000. But going through that process, that's $10,000 that I didn't have. And the city's saying, you need to do this within 2 months. So we asked for an extension. Just asking for that extension ended up costing us another $1,000. Plus we got additional fines. It's very, very, the city likes to be very aggressive in making people stick to the certification. So that ended up costing about $12,000 when all was said and done, between the siding and the city hitting us with fees and whatnot. So any cash flow I would have received in the first year, the second year, even the third year had already been spent on this property. There was a third thing, and this is what for a show called Multifamily Missteps, I think this is very important because this was a misstep. We didn't look carefully enough at the utility bills. when we bought this property. And part of that was because it was in foreclosure and we didn't have good records to look at. But what we found, what we knew going in was that as the owner, the utilities were not split between the 4 units. So as the owner, I was going to be paying the electric, gas, water, and sewer. We could have invested a lot more money to split, to put in HVAC systems for each unit and really split it out so that the tenants were responsible for those expenses. But this wasn't a high enough quality type property to be worth it. It wasn't worth that investment. And what that meant was that the utility bills alone were taking up about 23% of our gross income on this property. Now, anytime you see your utility bills, when you add them up, and I'm talking electric, gas, water, and sewer, when they're over 15%, you've got a problem. When you are over 20%, you have a substantial problem. And I'll never forget, I mentioned Sue Nelson. I remember her saying, if it's 25%, run as fast as you can. So we realized way too late that we were at 23%. And there was really, other than going in and putting substantial investment into the each unit to put in a separate HVAC and split the utilities, there was really not much we could do. Because we also knew we couldn't really raise rent above where it was, because there was kind of a ceiling on our rent in that area with what tenants would be willing to pay. So that was a big drag on our cash flow on this property. And that's something that I wish we had paid more attention to when we bought it. So I will tell you, I'll give you some more numbers here. And I'm looking at them here. If you're watching me on YouTube, you can tell that I'm looking at them on the other page. Our cash flow really during the 4 years that we own this property, it averaged out to just like 2 or 3% a year, because we did start making a little bit of cash flow in the 3rd and 4th years, and we had it for 4.5 years actually. So the one thing that saved us on this property, the only thing that saved us on this property, was the improving market. So because the market was improving, we bought this in 2009. We sold it right around 2014. The value had gone up substantially, and we were able to sell it for $115,000. And which today you could probably sell it for $200,000 or more. But with that profit, if you take the profit from sale after expenses plus the cash flow, we averaged about a 12% return on our investment, all in, the acquisition and rehab costs, 12% return per year, which is okay, but for all the work we put into it and the headache, and compared to the stock market, we could have done much better.
Whoa. So that was 2009 to 2014. So 5 years, average return of 12% a year, right?
Yeah. When all was said and done. And we were losing money and spending more money in the first couple of years.
Wow. So what did you do to make sure that never happens to you again?
Well, yeah. So there's a couple of lessons I took away from that. You really have to go in strong when you buy a property, especially a distressed property like this. Budget for everything that needs to be done. And that includes splitting the utilities or figuring out how do you get those utility costs down. Because quite often, if you buy a property that does have high utility costs, that's an opportunity. Because if you make the investment up front, you can get that cost down and add a lot of value to these properties. So we should have budgeted for that. We should have realized the city was going to make us address the exterior of the property and budgeted another $10,000 for that. We were kind of blinded by the fact that we were able to buy this at such a bargain basement price, and didn't really take all that into consideration. Another lesson that I took from that is you really got to let your dogs loose, cut your dogs loose. If your property is just limping along and it doesn't look like you're going to make a great return on it eventually, cut it loose, get rid of it as quickly as you possibly can. And the one good thing that came from owning this property is that one of our maintenance guys, one of our maintenance technicians was over there working on it one day, and a neighbor came over and thanked him for improving the neighborhood by getting rid of the drug dealers that used to live in that house. So we did improve the neighborhood, and we're proud of that. We just didn't really make a great profit in the process.
Got it. And so after that, you're going big and go home, right? You went straight to 100+ units, right?
Yeah. Once you go bigger, and it's not go big or go home, I would still buy a 4-unit under the right conditions. And this is in a neighborhood of Grand Rapids. It was right on the edge of Heritage Hill, which is a historic neighborhood, really incredible old properties. You can get much higher rents now. So I would still buy in that neighborhood. I'd buy a duplex if I could, at the right price. But when you go bigger, when you get over 10 units, 20 units, 100 units, you get efficiency of scale. You know, if one tenant is causing problems, or you have to evict them, or they don't pay their rent, you still have 99 other units that are doing that. And the profit potential is greater. And the thing that really makes a difference, and you know, when your show is called Multifamily Missteps. Well, multifamily, it can be 4 units, or it can be 5 units or more. And I'm sure you've talked about this on the show, but if you're 1 to 4 units, it's a residential type loan that you're going to get. And it's going to be valued based on the comparables in the neighborhood. When you're over 5 units, you know, whether you're 5 to 500 or 5,000 units, it's valued based on your net operating income. And the rule of thumb with a 10 cap is for every dollar that you add in value through increasing income or decreasing expenses, that's an exponential increase of 10 by 10 at a 10 cap. So if I save $1, I've added $10 to the value of that property. If it's a 5 cap, then you've actually added $20 in value to that property. So understanding how that math works when it comes to commercial properties, that really makes a big difference on your profit potential.
Awesome. And so, Brian, the last question I like to ask my guests is, what words of wisdom do you have for our listeners?
Pay close attention to the details. And this is a little bit different, I'm sure, than what a lot of your guests would say. But I'm going to share another pitfall that we've run into, and this has been discovered recently. But I would encourage everyone to look at their gas bill. And I'm going to tell you what to look for. So here in Michigan, we've deregulated our gas industry. So DTE provides our gas, and there are third-party vendors that can provide that gas for you through DTE. And typically they'll come to you. And I don't know if you have this where you live, Jerome, but typically they'll come to you and they'll say, hey, we can save you a lot of money on your gas. Here's what DTE charges, or your gas provider charges. Here's what we charge. All you have to do is sign up and we'll save you hundreds of dollars a year. Well, these things are always great in the beginning because they do save you money. But at some point, they go off the rails and they start gouging you. And it came to light recently that we had this third-party gas provider on a number of our properties, on a number of our gas bills. And the cost across the board was in the tens of thousands of dollars, additional dollars that we were paying them over what we would have been paying our gas company. So my concrete, actionable advice to all your listeners is go check your gas bill right now. Make sure there are no third-party providers providing that gas instead of your actual gas company.
I think that's awesome, especially for the people that are listening in the northern part of the country where they rely on gas for large part of the heating and water responsibilities.
Yeah, here in Michigan, it's you see mostly gas heat, or well, you see quite a bit of gas heat.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with the listeners today. We've learned a ton, and it's amazing to see somebody with such vast experience. You've been doing it a long time, and it's really interesting to also see like you've pressed pause. Like you thought things, I assume you thought things were overpriced. And so you've just been kind of managing the portfolio you have, which shows your patience. And I think real estate is a long game. And I think if you're investing in multifamily, you've got to be prudent in your buys. And I think your deal shows that, hey, this quad, you bought it at a really low price. You were able to operate and handle the things, and on the back end, because of appreciation, you were able to get out of it and still make a profit, even though you had a bunch of challenges along the way and not able to take out much cash flow. But I think those are some really, really valuable lessons, and I'm deeply grateful for you coming on and sharing with our audience.
Yeah, Jerome, you're a great host. You're also a great guest. You're going to be on my show, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor podcast. I think you do a great job, and I think you're providing a great service to real estate investors through this show, helping them learn where the pitfalls might be. And I would encourage your listeners to go to iTunes or wherever they listen to this podcast and give you 5 stars for whatever the highest number of stars and review is, because both of us know that as podcasters, it's those reviews and ratings that really help drive an audience. So I would encourage your audience to step up and give you a great rating.
Well, you heard it from the man himself. I think he's got like 850,000 downloads or something insane. So Brian, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerome.
You made it to this juncture, so you really love what we shared on this episode of Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. Do us a favor. Give us a 5-star rating. Give us a review. And share this with somebody who's interested in multifamily investing. Until the next time, the pack is with you.